Well, the Culture Shop 2004, I believe it was, is when we got the idea to open up a boutique. Basically, it was a independent designer and sneaker boutique, I suppose, because we ended up getting a Nike contract and was able to carry Nike products in the store. That was after about a year of being open. I think that we got the...
Yeah, this is a shoe I will never forget. We were the first people in the city to have this shoe. Nike had put out a shoe, Air Force One, that was covered in pony hair. Okay? It was covered in pony hair. It was tan. It was covered in pony hair, and it had like, it had a few variations of that tan brown color. It was almost ombre. That thing was ridiculous. And I had them because I had to have a pair for myself. They were very expensive because, mind you, at that time, sneaker collecting it's still a big thing, but it had a golden age. And I'm gonna tell you something. I'll never forget those shoes. I'm mad I don't have them anymore. I don't remember where they are now.
That was during the age of like vapes and ice creams.
Right.
When Amir first got his shoe deal and did the Questos. Of course, lots of AF1s, lots of Dunks, crazy different flavors, 3 Bears, Y3s. We had a lot of crazy fly shit that would come through, and like, of course we always had them, or I always had them. They just not as big a sneaker freak as I was, because I'm not as big a sneaker freak as I was back then. I like to save more of my money now. I'm a little bit more thrifty. I've gotten a little older, and so I stay out of the sneaker store as much as I.
Theory already.
Some point you got to call it quits. You got to know when to say when. You know what I mean? So that's pretty much where I am now.
Mm-hmm.
I got a lot of sneakers to buy at the house too. Remember, I got 6 kids. So.
Exactly. Yeah, we had a really great connection also with the city of Chicago because of a good friend, Dave Jeff, who had a boutique here, called Fly, and we ended up being one of the only 2 independent retailers to have an account with Nike, and that was pretty black independent retailers. So that's a big deal to be a person of color and have that opportunity at that time, specifically just because at that time urban clothing, quote unquote, had just begun to make its way into being high fashion. So you already had like Sean John, and you already had that kind of thing. But a lot of guys that had designed their own clothes and been selling their clothes out of their trunk and X, Y, and Z, those guys hadn't been able to kind of like ascend to that level. Nowadays, you got a ton of them. But back then, it wasn't as easy. So Fatim felt like it would be cool to have a brick and mortar, to give them a home instead of people just kind of selling things, vending and things of that nature. And also, too, online shopping at that time wasn't even as accessible as it is now.
That's crazy to think, how far we've come in such a short period of time.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, like a lot of the basic concept to do is very similar to what she's saying. Basically, we would meet people on the road all the time who would give us shirts or hats and, all kinds of different things that they had that were goods that we just felt like these are really, really strong things that we can't get in our city, what I mean? Well, some of the brands that we used to carry in the store from Chicago specifically were like Fly and Fashion Geek, Alonzo, and of course our good friend Dave Jeff, but we used to carry brands like Siphon and LRG. And a lot of independent designers that if we said their names, most people probably out there may not know, but
Freak Ugly
was a really great brand of cartoon like tees.
Oh gosh,
it's kind of hard to
a lot of folks think
back to it now. But,
I'm trying to remember. Oh goodness, I don't remember everybody, but there were a lot of really good folks that came through there.
I mean, we might be in Milwaukee or Kansas or wherever the case may be, and it's just like we wanted to be able to have that be centralized in a location where we knew that we have like-minded people that would enjoy these same style products and give them a place to go and shop for it and pick it up, and feel like they could get a piece of all of these different places that they might not travel to. We could bring them to Philadelphia. And we thought that it was a really good business model. And for a little while it was, you know what I mean? But to be honest, we are musicians and we had to be extremely dedicated to our music life, and it made it a little harder to teeter both lines because we were doing an upstart business that, you know, required a lot more dedication and funding than we could actually really keep that rolling in that way. And we
had to think too that what happened, the reason why I feel like it wasn't ultimately a long-term thing was also too because the recession kind of came right after we opened. Mm-hmm. We were open for maybe about a year or two, and then boom, then that hit. There were just, you know, a few factors into why, but the great thing about a place like that is if you provide something that doesn't exist at the time, it becomes more than just a shoe store or a clothing store. It ended up being really like a place, a really communal place. We had a DJ booth, and so we had a stage. We had artists that came and performed. We had DJs that kind of found their way there, and a lot of just energy around the place that made it like very communal. We did
the album release for like John Legend and Music Soul Child, and had advertisements and marketing promotion campaigns and stuff with like The Roots and Dice Raw and lots of different Anthony Hamilton. Mm-hmm. We did a lot of stuff within the community of artists that we, of course, are a part of, and so that was I
remember feeling
place for them to congregate and hang out and chill.
Yeah, I like to believe that also too. What we did was help to usher in the acceptance of a lot wider variety of urban designers into mainstream stores. Because none of those people were present in a lot of the Finish Line type places or Sneaker Villa or a lot of these different places that now really it's nothing to go in there and see a lot of brands, urban, quote unquote, urban brands in those stores. And I feel like we were a part of pushing that movement forward. I also think that
we always been underground trendsetters in some way, shape, or form. People might not tell you on the overground, but we've been right there. We've been right beneath the surface, just giving them ideas, showing them how it's done, and they just copy it, snatch it, and then we just left there without the bag.
Relax.
I'm just kidding.
Relax.
A little bit.
No, you're not kidding.
All right. I'm not kidding.
But yeah, so I don't know. I think we had like a definite we were involved in that kind of push. But one thing I think is really interesting about the Kulture Shop and why we really did end up closing was, like I said, was the recession happened. And then I think, just like all great things, with urban clothing, it became popular and they overpriced it. They priced themselves.
A lot of the designers was overpricing to even get it wholesale. You know what I mean? Because everybody trying to make the bag, you know what I mean, one way or another, and they forget that, they are independent designers.
Yep. And then places like Target and places like that started doing graphic tees. Mm-hmm. And so you could go get a cool graphic tee, for $10 or $15, and
instead of for
people just or 40 or 55.
Yeah.
I see the trend circling back around now, and I think that's actually great. Mm-hmm. Because now you have the opportunity
and all those different kinds of brands.
Come on, you said it before I could. I see it coming back around, but I see a lot of independent like graphic designers being able to really find a place for themselves in the world, and just thanks to online shopping. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's just blew everything out of the water. Mm-hmm. So that's been great. We actually have seen some of the artists that we worked with, some of the designers we worked with, we've seen their brands grow exponentially. Mm-hmm. So that's been really gratifying too, to feel like we're a part of somebody else's story. Mm-hmm. And so that part's been really, really great. Mm-hmm. But it'll always be a thing. I mean, for those of the people that were there.
We did campaigns for Barack the Block back in the day when he was running. You know what I mean? He was even supposed to come. He didn't make it, but he was supposed to be there.
Yep, on his first bid for president. Mm-hmm. And in fact, the night that he won, we were in the shop.
Yeah, we had a big party. It was crazy.
We had a big watch party.
Crying in the streets. They couldn't believe it.
It was wild.
Yeah.
We had performances. We were there to the middle of the night. My kids were there. By the time he won, and we knew for sure that he'd won, everybody poured out the front door of the shop into the street. That to me is my favorite memory of the Kulture Shop, was that night. Because that night it felt like
it's interesting.
A community. It felt like history. You know what I mean?
Well, we ushered. It was like grand opening, grand close. We ushered in. Barack came in the office, and then it was like.
Well, we've been up for 4 years by then. Yeah, by then it was 4 years, and it's and that's the part where it's kind of like, well, a bummer, because they say most businesses don't last the first 5 years, and so we had just almost made 5 years,
it was almost to the promised land.
To the promised land, and we didn't make it. But you know, as wonderful as that was, I gotta say this also, that, and this is just a sign of the times. Right now, currently, the building that we were in is a secondhand, it's like a
children's boutique.
A children's boutique for secondhand clothing, and
the other one is
a restaurant.
A bar and restaurant.
The neighborhood has changed so much. So to see a neighborhood that didn't have any businesses, that had like a corner store and like nothing else, and then we were the only thing there. But to see now that there's businesses all up and down the corridor,
it's such a nice feeling. It's such a nice feeling to see all those businesses flourishing and thriving, and that's great. And we're just very proud and happy about that.
He's not
proud. Where we live.
He's not proud.
Yes, I am. I'm excited. We go there. We support them.
Well, our original location is still a Black-owned business, which is really great,
that's always
because
awesome.
we live in a highly gentrified neighborhood, and so to see that something that we put so much love and work into is now still kind of run by locally run by a family that lives in the community, and it's a family-owned business, and it's a Black-owned business, makes us feel like there's some sort of, Ujamaa. Collective
economics. Yes.